Some believe that for every fairy creature who dwells on land, there are 10 more in the sea. Creatures like mermaids and selkies are just the tip of the iceberg. There are umpteen accounts over centuries of bizarre creatures witnessed at sea, either at a distance or up very close enough for sailors to report their description and demeanour in detail. G'day, I'm Kitty. Welcome to Fairy Encounters. Countless are the stories told by those out at sea, tales of foreshadowing, warnings, intimidation, and even attempts to sink or drown, and sightings of creatures who come from the sea onto land to eat, then return below the waves again. In this video, we're going to the west coast of Ireland and the islands off the coast. This is a collection of witness accounts as published by Lady Gregory in 1920 from sailors, fishermen, and their families who lived on and around the wild, remote islands off the west coast of Ireland. So settle in and relax, and I hope you enjoy these truly extraordinary stories. They are on the sea as well as on the land, and their boats are often to be seen on the bay, sailing boats and others. They look like our own, but when you come near them, they are gone in an instant. My mother, one time, thought she saw our own boat come in to the pier with my father and 2 other men in it, and she got the supper ready, but when she went down to the pier and called them, there was nothing there, and the boat didn't come in till another 2 hours after. There were 3 or 4 men went out one day to fish, and it was dead calm, but all of a sudden they heard a blast, and they looked, and within about 3 miles of the boat, they saw 12 men from the waist. The rest of them was underwater, and they had sticks in their hands and were striking one another. And where they were and the blast, it was rough, but it was smooth and calm on each side. There's a sort of light on the sea sometimes. Some call it a jack-o'-lantern, and some say that it is sent by them to mislead them. There's many of them out in the sea, and often they pull the boats down. It's about 2 years since 4 fishermen went out from Arran, 2 fathers and 2 sons, where they saw a big ship coming in and flying the flag for a pilot, and they thought she wanted to be brought in to Galway. And when they got near the ship, it faded away to nothing, and the boat turned over, and they were all 4 of them drowned. There were 2 brothers of my own who went out fishing for the herrings, and what they brought up was like the print of a cat, and it turned with the inside of the skin outside and no hair. So they pulled up the nets and fished no more that day. There was one of them lying on the strand here, and some of the men of the village came down all of a sudden and surprised him. And when he saw them, he was taken and began a great crying. But they only lifted him down to the sea and put him back into it. Just like a man, they said he was. And a little way out there was another just like him. And when he saw that they treated the one on shore so kindly, he bowed his head as if to thank them. Whatever's on the land, There's the same in the sea, and between the islands of Arran, they can often see the horses galloping about at the bottom. There was a sort of a big eel used to be in Tully churchyard. He used to come and to root up the bodies, but I didn't hear of him of late, so he may be done away with now. But there was one Curran told me one night. He went down to the strand where he used to be watching for timber thrown up and the like, and on the strand, on the dry sands, he saw a boat, a grand one with sails spread and all, and it up farther than any tide had ever reached, and he saw a great many people round about it, and it was all lighted up with lights, and he got afraid and went away, and 4 hours after sunrise, he went there again to look at it, and there was no sign of it, or of any fire, or of any other thing. A boy told me last night of 2 men that went with Pocheen to the island of Arran, and when they were on the shore, they saw a ship coming as if to land, and they said, "We'll have the bottle ready for those that are coming." But when the ship came close to land, it vanished, and presently they got their boat ready and put out to sea, and a sudden blast came and swept one of them off, and the other saw him come up again and put out the oar across his breast for him to take hold of it, but he would not take it, and said, "I'm all right again now," and sank down again and was never seen no more. There is no luck if you meet a mermaid and you out at sea, but storms will come, or some ill will happen. There was a ship on the way to America, and a mermaid was seen following it, and the bad weather began to come, and the captain said, "It must be some man in the ship she's following, and if we knew which one it was, we'd put him out to her and save ourselves." So they drew lots, and the lot fell on one man. And then the captain was sorry for him and said he'd give him a chance till tomorrow. And the next day she was following them still, and they drew lots again, and the lot fell on the same man. But the captain said he'd give him a 3rd chance. But the 3rd day, the lot fell on him again, and when they were going to throw him out, he said, "Let me alone just for a while." And he went to the end of the ship, and he began to sing a song in Irish. And when he sang, the mermaid began to be quiet and to rock like as if she was asleep. So he went on singing till they came to America, and just as they got to the land, the ship was thrown up into the air and came down on the water again. There's a man told me that this was surely true. And there was a boy saw a mermaid down by Spittal not long ago, but he saw her before she saw him, so she did him no harm. But if she'd seen him first, she'd have brought him away and drowned him. Sometimes a light will come on the sea before the boats for to guide them to the land. And my own brother told me one day he was out on his own and a storm came on of a sudden, and the sail of the boat was let down as quick and as well as if 2 men were in it. Some neighbour or friend it must have been that did that for him. There was a man on this island was down on the beach one evening with his dog, and some black thing came up out of the sea, and the dog made for it and began to fight it. And the man began to run home, and he called the dog, and it followed him, but every now and then it would stop and begin to fight this black thing again. And when he got to the house, he called the dog in and shut the door, and whatever was outside began hitting against the door, but it didn't get in. The dog took itself in under the bed in the room, and before morning it was dead. It's in the middle island, the most of them are, and I'll tell you a thing that I know of myself that happened not long ago. There was a young girl, and one evening she was missing, and they made search for her everywhere, and they thought that she was drowned or that she had gone away with some man. And in the evening of the next day, there was a boy out in a curragh, and as he passed by a rock that is out in the sea, there was the girl on it, and he brought her off. Now, surely she could not go there by herself. I suppose she wasn't able to give much account of what happened, and now she's after going to America. My mother had put out wool to dry in front of where that house is with the 3 chimneys there near the chapel, and I was there talking to some man, one on each side of the yard, and the wall between us. Now the day was as fine as this day is, and even finer, and not a breath of air was stirring. And a woman that lived nearby had her wool out drying too, and the wool that was in my mother's yard began to rise up as if something was under it. And I called to the other man to help me to hold it down, but for all we could do, it went up in the air, 100 feet or more, till we could see it no more. Then, after a couple of hours, it began to drop again, like snow, some on the thatch and some on the rocks and some in the gardens. And I think it was a fortnight before my mother had done gathering it. And one day she was spinning it. I don't know what put it in my mind, but I asked her, did she lose much of that wool? And what she said was, if I didn't get more than my own, I didn't get less. Now that's true and no lie, for I never told a lie in my life, I think, but the wool belonging to the neighbouring woman was never stirred at all. It's said there's everything in the sea the same as on the land, and we know there's horses in it. This boy here saw a horse one time out in the sea, a grey one swimming about, and there were 3 men from the North Island caught a horse in their nets one night when they were fishing for mackerel, but they let it go. It would have broke the boat to bits if they'd brought it in, and anyhow they knew it was best to leave it. One year at Kinvara, the people were missing their oats. It was eaten in the fields, and they watched one night, and it was 5 or 6 of the sea horses they saw eating the oats, but they could not take them, and they made off to the sea. And there was a man on the North Island fishing on the rocks one time, and a mermaid came up before him and was partly like a fish and the rest like a woman, but he called to her in the name of God to be off, and she went and left him. There was a boy was sent over here one morning early by a friend of mine on the other side of the island to bring over some cattle that were in a field he had here, and it was before daylight, and he came to the door crying, and he said he heard 30 horses or more galloping over the roads there, where you'd think no horse could go. Surely these things are on the sea as well as on the land. My father was out fishing one night off Tyrone, and something came up beside the boat that had eyes shining like candles. And then a wave came in, and a storm rose of a moment, and whatever was in the wave, the weight of it had like to sink his boat. And then they saw that it was a woman in the sea that had the shining eyes. So my father went to the priest, and he bid him always to take a drop of holy water and a pinch of salt out in the boat with him, and nothing would harm him then. One night I was out on the boat with another man, and we saw a big ship near us with about 20 lights. She was as close to us as that rock there, about 30 yards, but we saw no one on board, and she was like some of the French ships that sometimes come into Galway. She went on near us for a while, and then she turned towards the shore, and then we knew that she was not a right ship, and she went straight on to the land, and when she touched it, the lights went out, and we saw her no more. There was a comrade of mine was out one night, and a ship came after him with lights, and she full of people. And as they drew near the land, he heard them shouting at him, and he got afraid, and he went down and got a coal of fire and threw it at the ship, and in a minute it was gone. A horse I've seen myself on the sea and on the rocks, a brown one, just like another, and I threw a stone at it, and it was gone in a minute. We often heard there was fighting among these, and one morning before daybreak, I went down to the strand with some others, and the whole of the strand, and it low tide, was covered with blood. I was told there was a mare that had a foal, and it had never had a horse. One day the mare and foal were down by the sea, and a horse put up its head and neighed, and away went the foal to it, and came back no more. And there was a man on this island watched his field one night when he thought the neighbour's cattle were eating his grass, and what he saw was horses and foals coming up from the sea. And he caught a foal and kept it and set it to racing, and no horse or no pony could ever come near it, till one day the race was on the strand, and away it went into the sea, and the jockey along with it, and they never were seen again. There was a girl here that had been to America but had come back, and one day she was coming over from Liscannor in a curragh, and she looked back in the water behind the curragh and saw what they call the headless one. Well, he followed the boat for a great distance, but she said nothing. As she sat in the curragh, a gold pin that was in her hair fell out and into the sea, the one that she had brought back from America, and it disappeared. And her sister was always asking her where was the pin she brought from America, but she was too afraid to say. At last she told her, and the sister said, "It's well for you that it fell out, for what was following you would never have left you till you threw it a ring or something made of gold." and it was the sister herself that told me this. There was a man, had his horse drawing seaweed up there on the rocks, just the way you see them drawing it every day, in a basket on the mare's back. And on this day, every time he put the load on, the mare would let its leg slip and it would come down again. And he was vexed, and he had a stick in his hand and he gave the mare a heavy blow. And that night she had a foal that was dead, not come to its full growth, and it had spots over it, and every spot was of a different colour, and there was no sire on the island at that time, so whatever was the sire must have come up from the sea. Well, I purposefully left that report for last. It was initially disturbing to me on account of the heavy blow that the man took to the mare, but when we stop to think about that mare and how she came to be carrying the strange foal, well, it opens up a whole new level of mystery and, shall we say, possibilities, doesn't it? Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I really love the way that people recount their stories, their turn of phrase. I really enjoy that from these older stories. And I hope that Lady Gregory would be pleased that 100 years on, we're still sharing the stories that she collected. Well, if you like exploring all things fairy, please consider joining the channel as a member. Members receive early access to videos, special treats, and have their name featured in every video. Just tap the join button below to check it out. Your support will help the channel enormously. Now I'll let you go, but until next time, stay curious. Cheerio.